Will temperature swings on your offset smoker ruin your brisket? A lot of people seem to think so, but I'm not so sure. So I'm smoking 2 briskets in this experiment, one with steady temps and one with wild temperature swings, and we're going to see if there's a difference in the final product in terms of juiciness, taste, and overall quality. So let's get smoking. Welcome to the Smoke Lab, guys. I am excited because this is a new show on the Oklahoma Joe's YouTube channel where I basically do what I do on my own channel, barbecue experiments, so you can learn from my trial and error and get better at barbecue. This is an ongoing series, so if you have any requests for experiments you want to see, drop them in the comments section below. Now, if you've ever used an offset smoker, then this experiment is going to interest you because you've probably had an experience like this. You're targeting a temperature of, let's say, 250 degrees Fahrenheit, but your temperatures go down to 225, then you add some charcoal and a split of wood, and then it spikes up to 300 or 325, and then it starts dipping down again, and you can't seem to dial it in. And you work harder at it, and you get a little bit better, and you dial in your temperatures, but they always seem to swing up and down. And the question in my mind is, do those temperature swings affect the quality of your meat? Let's say you could dial in your temperatures so they're plus minus 5 degrees instead of 25 or 50 degrees, which brings me to the hypothesis for this video. I don't think that temperature swings will have a significant impact on the quality of my brisket, as long as I'm using a water pan and doing a couple of other things, which I'll show in this video. But that's just my gut feeling, and it has been for a long time, so I want to finally put it to bed and test it out in this video. So let's get to it. For this experiment, I prepared a rub with a 1/4 cup of kosher salt, a 1/4 cup of coarse pepper, a tablespoon of Lawry's seasoned salt, and a bit of oil as a binder. I trimmed 2 choice grade Angus briskets and vac sealed them the night before, rubbed them, and let them sit for an hour while I preheated the smoker. Heading over to my Longhorn Offset, I'm clearing the snow off, and I'm going to fill a chimney full of lump charcoal, light it, and wait 15 minutes for it to get fully lit while I enjoy this scenic Christmas day. I'm just kidding. This is just a typical March day in Canada where apparently winter never ends. After the charcoal's lit, I'm dumping it in the firebox. I'm using a fire basket, by the way. And while the smoker preheats, I'm chopping some splits of wood, lopping them into smaller chunks with my alligator loppers, and then placing a few on the firebox to preheat. Now, this is important. I'm putting a water pan next to the firebox with a few inches gap to the right to allow hot air up and over the water pan. Usually I use water, but in this case there's snow all around me, so when in Rome. This is a very important step because this large water pan, which will keep constantly filled during the cook, is going to absorb the radiant heat from the fire, so we just have nice, gentle, convective air getting to the brisket. Now those preheated splits are going on the fire, and I'm moving over to the cook chamber to set up my temperature probes. I have an apple here with a probe in the middle for grate level temps, one poking up to measure temps higher in the cook chamber, and one poking down to measure temperatures below grate level. And now I'm placing the brisket on the smoker, point to the fire at a bit of an angle, mainly so it'll fit, but also so it has more surface area exposed to the heat and it'll cook faster. Now I smoked it at 250 degrees Fahrenheit for the first 2 hours, rotated the brisket to help it cook more evenly, bumped the temperatures up to 260 for the next 2 hours, rotated the brisket again, and then I targeted 285 degrees Fahrenheit for the remaining 6 hours of the cook. In terms of my fire management strategy, I watched my temperature probe readout, and every time it started to dip down in temperature, I would move over to my intake damper and slightly open it by about a 1/4 inch or so. And when it started going up in temperature over my target temp, I would close the damper door by about a 1/4 inch. And in addition to this, I would add a split or 2 of wood and a couple handfuls of lump charcoal every 20 minutes to keep the fire going. But really, I was controlling the temperature with the intake airflow damper. And in this way, I was able to get really steady temperatures within about plus or minus 5 or 10 degrees, which is absolutely crazy, but it took constant attention, like the kind of attention where I couldn't even look at my phone or go to the bathroom without losing control of the temperatures. So it's a huge commitment to have that level of temperature control, but it is doable. Finally, after 10 hours, the brisket was probing at 190 degrees internal, so I removed it from the smoker, wrapped it in butcher paper with a bit of beef tallow and clarified butter, and then I held it in my holding chest at 150 degrees for the next 15 to 20 hours. This is another important step to my cooking technique because it allows the brisket to be pulled at a lower internal temperature, so you retain a lot of juiciness and beef flavor, and then you slowly render out all the collagen and the fat over a long period of time at 150 degrees Fahrenheit in a oven, or in this case, my sous vide holding chest. If you don't have a sous vide machine or a holding chest, you can just use your oven. Just look in your manual and there'll often be instructions on how to adjust your temperature down so you can get a steady 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Just always confirm your temperatures in your oven with a remote graphing probe thermometer, because it'll tell you exactly what the temperature is in your oven at all times. Often you think that you have adjusted your oven temperatures down to 150, but it's actually swinging from 150 to 200 because ovens are super inaccurate. Now, moving on to the wild temperature swing brisket. I did everything the same as the first brisket with the brisket placement and water pan, but instead of carefully controlling temperatures with the intake damper, I just tossed a large split of wood and some charcoal on the fire every 30 minutes or so, and I didn't really even pay attention to the temperature at all. In fact, I even let the fire completely die down a few times so the brisket internal temp actually came down in temperature, and then I restarted the fire and the brisket internal temperature started to climb again. And after 13 hours, that's right, it took 3 extra hours with the wild temp swings, the brisket probed at 190 on average, so I removed it, wrapped it, and held it in my holding chest at 150 for 15 to 20 hours, just like the other brisket. All right, guys, I've unwrapped this brisket after it's been holding in my sous vide holding chest for 18 hours now. Now, taking a look at this thing, I can tell that it had some steady temperatures during the cook because it doesn't have any dry or burnt edges. This one bit of the point is a little bit dry, but it's backed off a little bit in the long hold because it was in a moisture-rich environment. I can also tell that the fat is really well rendered, so that's a good thing. And if I probe it, we'll probe into the flat. Flat is probing very nicely, and the flat underneath the point is probing really nicely, and the point is probing like butter. So I think this brisket is evenly cooked. Sometimes you get a flat that's undercooked and the point can be a bit overcooked, but I think those steady temperatures really help this brisket cook more evenly and not get as many burnt edges. But we'll have to find out when we compare it to the not steady temperature brisket. So let's slice into this thing now. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna slice it right down the middle. It's slicing really nicely. I can tell it's really tender. Whew. I have a feeling it's gonna be a good one. So I'll move that out there and look at that. That is looking crazy good. Oh my God, look at that. I'm just gonna give it a little squeeze for you guys. Now, I'm gonna cover this with a little bit of tallow that I've melted, and that's just going to prevent the meat from oxidizing. It's gonna keep everything looking fresh. And now I'm going to take a slice of the flat. It's usually the leaner part of the brisket, so I like to start with it. Slicing really nicely. That is looking really nice. Looks like a little mouth. Hey guys, how's it going? It looks super delicious. It bends over on my finger, and now let's pull it apart. Pulls apart super easily. Let's give this thing a taste. That's tasty. I'm gonna give the bark a taste. Smoky, tender, offset smoker flavor. It's amazing. And also, if you guys look right there, you can see how the fat is nice and rendered. It's got that yellow caramelly type consistency, and it tastes absolutely amazing. That's next level. Oh my God, that's so good. Okay, now I'm gonna take a slice of the point, and what I do is I just start on an edge. And if there's any fat left, I will slice it off, but this one's pretty good, so I'll just cut these burnt ends off right here. One slice right there. These are our burnt ends, so I'll just chunk them up. And these are absolutely delicious. These are what you give to the people you like the most in your family or your favorite friends, because these are absolutely delicious. They've got that nice smoky bark on the outside. They've got perfectly rendered intramuscular fat on the inside. It's amazing. Okay, now let's take a slice of the point here. Now, if your point is overcooked, you can take larger slices. And if your point is undercooked, you can take smaller slices. That's a pro tip. Take a look at that. That is a thing of beauty. Wow. Ooh, that looks good. Now I'll pull it apart, do the pull test. Pulls apart effortlessly. Let's see how it tastes. That is my favorite bite of brisket. That point muscle. Oh. This brisket is perfect. All right, guys, this is the wild offset brisket, the wild temperature swing offset brisket. It's been holding at 150 degrees Fahrenheit for the past 18 hours. Now we're going to take a look at it and we're going to see if it looks any different than the steady temperature brisket that we just looked at. That looks like a really good brisket. I'm surprised. I thought this thing would be a little bit crispy, but it looks like the long hold wrapped in all of that tallow and clarified butter and moisture, and there's some vapor surrounding it, some water vapor. It looks like it's steamed back the bark a little bit and the bark has softened up. So I'll just touch this area of the point. It seems a little bit hard to me, so that might be a little bit tough and overcooked. This part here on the burnt end side, it seems pretty tender, so pretty good so far. And then the flat side seems pretty well cooked, actually. It might be a little bit overcooked. I'm pushing my fingers up into it, and it seems pretty soft. The underside of the brisket is a little bit tough. Let's see if I can poke down and press into the fat cap here. Actually, yes, it is very well rendered. So that's a good sign. When I poke the fat cap, it just pokes right through and I can tell that it's really nicely rendered. This side of the flat here seems pretty good. So far just looking at it and feeling it, given the wild temperature swings that this thing went through, I'm feeling some tough areas, but also some really tender areas, but we won't know until we cut into it. So let's do that now. Okay, I'm gonna slice into this guy now. And before I do that, actually, I'm just gonna give it a quick temp with my Thermapen. It's about 135. Usually I like to cut into it around 140, so it's a bit lower, but I was taking a bunch of pictures, so that's okay. I'm going to slice into this guy now, and we'll see how good it is. And there we have it. Look at that. That looks absolutely beautiful. Oh, that looks amazing. Eat me, I'm so delicious. I'll give you guys the double-decker shot. Oh man, that looks good. And again, guys, this is a choice brisket. It's nothing fancy. If you cook it the right way, then you can have a really good brisket on your hands no matter the grade of brisket. Maybe not if it's a select grade brisket. It's hard to make a select grade brisket good, but choice grade briskets, you can definitely make them taste absolutely amazing. Okay, I'm gonna cover that up with some board tallow here. And let's give this bad boy a slice. That is looking absolutely amazing. Let's pull this apart. Oof, perfect. Top, perfect. Bottom of the flat, perfect. Looks amazing. And I'll get a slice of the point. I'm just gonna take some burnt ends off here. So I'll chunk those up. Oop, oop. There's my burnt ends. And I'll just take a slice here. Actually, this is more part of the flat because as you'll recall, we carved a lot of the point up here away because it had a huge seam. So what I'm gonna do actually is just start from the point side. So on the point side here, I'm gonna carve off some burnt ends. I'll chunk those up. Those look really tasty. And then I'm going to take a couple slices. I'll give you guys a look here. I can already tell this is gonna taste absolutely amazing. This looks really good. Pull it apart, pulls apart like nothing. All right, I'm gonna try out a piece of the flat. It's good, it's smoky, it's got a ton of flavor, it's perfectly cooked. I don't really have anything negative to say about that. Now let me try the point. This is an absolutely amazing looking point. It's really tasty, it's phenomenal. It's just as good, if not better, as the brisket that I cooked with the steady temperatures. There's nothing wrong with this brisket so far. Tastes amazing. Tastes absolutely amazing. Now, there was that piece of the point that I identified that might have gotten a little bit overcooked, so we'll just slice into this guy, and we'll see if that is actually the case. So far, this thing is slicing really nicely. It might be a little bit more overcooked than I tend to like on the point side, but it's really tasty. Okay, and now you can see how the muscle fibers here are a little bit dry. I'll just cut into that. But actually, now that I cut into it, it's not overcooked at all. It's not dry. So, you know, you could chunk this off as a burnt end piece, but otherwise, it's a perfect point. And now I'm cutting into the flat. It's actually more tender than I thought it would be. It starts to get a little bit drier as you get to the edge of it, just like with every brisket. Try one of the end pieces here. It's really good. So guys, the brisket that I did with wild temperature swings that I barely paid attention to actually turned out just as good as the brisket that I sat by the fire with, and I controlled the temperatures and I sat there all day really dialing in the temperature control. This brisket tastes absolutely amazing and I've got nothing bad to say about it. The only downside I would say is that it took a lot longer to cook. It probably took 30% longer to cook this brisket because my temperature swings were going up and down and I let the meat temperature go up and down. So guys, what this experiment shows is that you don't really have to worry too much about the temperature control on your offset within reason. If you're plus or minus 25 to 50 degrees of your target temperature, you're going to be fine. I was going plus or minus 100 degrees, sometimes even more with this brisket, and it turned out really good. I even let it drop down in temperature and the fire extinguished a few times completely. I had to light it back up again. As long as you have that water pan that's sucking up all that radiant heat from the firebox and you're just getting nice convective heat, even if it's all the way up to 350 degrees, it's nice, gentle, convective heat. It's not going to ruin your brisket. Have a large water pan constantly filled right next to the firebox, and even if you have wild temperature swings like you saw me have in this video while you go and do chores and enjoy your day and you're not babysitting the offset all day, that's completely fine. You're still gonna be able to make a good brisket and your family's gonna love it. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and stay tuned for the next Smoke Lab video on the Oklahoma Joe's YouTube channel. And if you guys like my content, head on over to my channel, Smoke Trails Barbecue on YouTube. Give me a subscribe and watch a couple of my videos. I always appreciate it. All right, guys, see you in the next video and happy smoking.